Hello everyone, it's Elliot here, back with another film to talk about today. I'm going to be discussing the film Vampyr, and this is the brand new Blu-ray from Eureka Masters of Cinema. So I'm going to be delving into this, giving you a bit of a review about this release, and just talking about my appreciation of the film in general. As I'm going through this video, I'm going to be comparing this brand new release to a previous release of Vampyr, which is this one here. This is the Criterion Region A Blu-ray, which was released in 2017. So if you are a fan of Vampyr and you're not too sure whether to upgrade to this brand new one here from Eureka, then hopefully this video will help you out in deciding whether it's worth it or not. So before I break down this new Eureka release, I'll just talk a bit about the film itself. So Vampyr is a film released in 1932 from the Danish master of cinema, Carl Dreyer, who many people will know from his other films, such as The Passion of Joan of Arc, and later on in his career he had films such as Day of Wrath and Audette, and he's very well known for these films. Vampyr is somewhat of an oddity in his filmography because as you would imagine, it's a film that is considered a horror film about a vampire. At the time, horror wasn't really seen as a genre within cinema. People had experimented with scary stories and horror images, but it wasn't a fully fleshed out genre such as it is today. So we can look back at seminal films, perhaps such as Vampyr, and certainly Todd Browning's Dracula, which was released the same year as Vampyr. So why am I saying all of this? Well, it's not your typical vampire movie. So I mentioned Todd Browning's Dracula, the classic Universal monster movie, whereas that is very much, the iconic vampire. This isn't. This is more concerning spirits and shadows. It is very experimental in its filmmaking, and I think that's why it stands the test of time. I think this is a masterpiece, and I didn't initially think that when I watched it years and years ago, but revisiting it for this release certainly, cemented it as a very important film indeed, and I really do appreciate it a lot. Particularly with the help of the special features on this disc, some of the audio commentaries really did grow my appreciation of this film. It's worth noting that when it came out in 1932, this was obviously the dawn of the sound era of cinema, and Carl Dreyer was known as an important figure in Danish silent cinema, and many people think that The Passion of Joan of Arc is one of the greatest films of all time, not just one of the greatest silent films of all time. So he was really, getting to the peak of his power during the late silent period. And initially, I think Vampyr was, imagined to be a silent film. But then as technology grew, they decided to actually make it a sound film. But really in spirit, it is still a silent film. That there are periods where there's no dialogue whatsoever. So I still consider this a silent film. So with all of that said about the movie, hopefully it's piqued your interest. Let's have a look at this brand new release from Eureka. Now, I'll start off by saying that I'm very impressed with the overall presentation. It is in the fancy hardbound boxes, which lots of people like, me included. And you can see it's spine number 262 in the Masters of Cinema collection. This is one of the original theatrical poster designs from 1932. To be honest, the imagery on the front of here, I don't think corresponds directly to what is in the film. This evokes images perhaps of something different to the film itself. If I was to compare the artwork of the new Eureka one to the Criterion release, I think the Criterion one fits the aesthetic more of the film. but nevertheless, I do really admire this artwork too. Inside the hardbound case, you get two things. You get, of course, the Blu-ray disc case, and inside that, you just get the Blu-ray. I'm not quite sure where this artwork from. I'm not sure if that's original theatrical poster artwork, but I do know that this was previously on Eureka's DVD release. And then the other thing that you get in the case is this booklet, and it is quite a substantial one, running at almost 100 pages in total. And inside here there's a number of very interesting things, including there's some writings by Carl Dreyer himself on his style in cinema, and that's called Imagination and Colour. And then there are some various other production notes and some essays from film scholars and critics alike. So there's a lot to get into in the booklet there. Now this is all well and good, but you probably want to know how this compares in terms of picture quality and audio to the Criterion release. Well, I didn't really notice anything in terms of differing audio. There may well be some differences, but to my ears, I didn't really notice anything. And that is, due to the age of the film. There's only so much that can be done with audio that is that old. However, when it comes to the video quality in terms of the differences between the Eureka and the Criterion release, there are some quite substantial differences. As noted on the back of the card that was on the case here, it says that this was an all-new 2K digital restoration of the German version by the Danish Film Institute, completed in 2020. So this is a more recent source for the film than was used on the previous Criterion disc. If you look at them side by side in motion, there's not too much difference in terms of the resolution of the picture. So the clarity and the detail that you get there, it's not going to be mind-blowing. But what is different, and this is really noticeable, is that the actual image has been cleaned up a lot. So there's been more restoration here to remove, scratches, dirt, damage to the film print, etc. Over time, it really compounds to the point where I think the film looks a lot better in motion than it does on the Criterion Blu-ray. Now, that's not to say that the video quality is bad on the Criterion one. I actually think, it's still very good, and it was the best before the brand new Eureka one came along. I would say if you're thinking about upgrading, if you already own this, in terms of picture quality, there is definitely an improvement. I think the Eureka one does look better in motion and is a more pleasing viewing experience. However, if you're not a big fan of the film, if you only sort of like Vampyr, then it's probably not worth upgrading. It's not going to absolutely, be night and day in terms of a difference between these two releases. Another thing to consider is, of course, the supplemental material, so the special features, and the two different booklets between these two releases. I talked about the Eureka booklet before. It's worth noting that the Criterion release did come with a booklet called Writing Vampyr, and this has the screenplay for the film, but also one of the sources for the story itself, Carmilla, by Sheridan Le Fanu. So two different booklets that you get with these two releases. So if you are a super fan of Vampyr, it's definitely worth having both for the two different books. As well as that, the special features included on the Eureka release, I think, do beat out the old Criterion disc. In fact, the Eureka disc has pretty much everything that was on the Criterion disc, plus some extra stuff. So I'll just give you a bit of an insight into what is included. So on the Eureka Vampyr disc, you have two audio commentaries. So you've got one with Tony Raines, and if you're a Blu-ray collector, you'll be familiar with Tony Raines. He does a lot of audio commentaries and features on Asian cinema. So it's quite interesting to see him on Vampyr here, but it is a great commentary. And then the other second commentary is, of course, with Guillermo del Toro. who is obviously a big fan of Vampyr. Of these two commentaries, only the Tony Raines one featured on the old Criterion disc. So if you want the Guillermo del Toro commentary, you have to get this Eureka disc. Now, it is an old commentary because it was made for Eureka's DVD from 2008, I think. So you can also get it on the old DVD, but if you want it on a Blu-ray, you have to get this Eureka one. And I think it's a brilliant commentary because Del Toro talks about his fanaticism for this film. He talks about the myth of the vampire and its links to, the spiritual, and he talks about memento moris and being reminded of death and things like that. So it's a great commentary. Beyond that, there is a new video interview with Kim Newman talking about Vampyr's place in vampire, modern culture. And obviously Kim Newman knows a lot about this kind of stuff. There are two new video interviews with music and cultural historian David Hookvale about Vampyr. There is a documentary about Carl Dreyer, and this documentary was featured on the older Criterion disc. There are two deleted scenes. There is The Baron, which is a short Masters of Cinema documentary, and there is a visual essay on the influences on Vampyr by Caspar Tieberg, which is featured on the Criterion disc as well. So there is a lot to compare between these two, but I hope I've given you a bit of insight into the differences between these. I think if you were to pick one between these releases, I would definitely go with the new Masters of Cinema release. And if you're a big fan of the film like I am, you probably will want to keep both on your shelf. That's certainly what I'm going to be doing. If hearing about Vampyr in this video has piqued your interest in Eureka releases, then please do watch the video on screen now because you'll hear more about Eureka goodness. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.